Hello and welcome to my Tuesday night live painting demo. I have this photo of a model. Her name is Laura Schuler. I found this image initially on Pinterest, but I was able to track both her down and the photographer and to get at least an okay from her. I never heard back from the photographer, so hopefully this will be okay. And apparently, this is an image that does get painted a lot, so um, I think artists find it on Pinterest initially, and like I did, and then they do versions of the painting from there. Anyway, so I'm just going to jump right in and start by laying out sort of just the major landmarks here. If you're just joining me, let me see, there's one person watching besides me. Just if you want to let me know who you are and where you're watching from, you don't have to if you don't want to. And I'm also more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. I've laid out quite, hopefully you can see my palette pretty well. I've laid out quite a bit of the reds and oranges for tonight, just anticipating that I'm going to use a fair amount in the painting. Even though for the face, really not that much, but the hair definitely is going to require quite a bit. Um, just trying to get a line here. A little bit of measuring won't hurt here. So I tend to be wildly off when I first get started. Base of the nose, right there. So a little bit higher. Shape of the mouth. Okay. And then to the bridge of the nose to the edge is a little bit closer to the edge of the panel. Okay, welcome. I see there's more people that have joined. Welcome to my Tuesday night painting demo. Just getting started. Um, there was about 800 people who voted on which image for me to paint tonight. I put up several of this model in various poses, three by the same photographer, and one was a selfie. And she's got the line of her neck, and that comes all the way down. And then we see kind of more in the shadow her far shoulder. Both her shoulders are hunched forward as she's resting on them. And so I want to sort of keep in mind the line of the shoulder around the neck. Sometimes it's helpful to draw right through, so that would be something more like that. The ear, I can see I have it too far forward already. No, maybe I'm wrong about that. Okay, a few more people have joined. Welcome. And just gonna outline where the hair is. Want to keep the gesture of the neck sort of, there's a lot of tension back here, and the neck is stretched out in the front, something like that. Got a little bit of purple. I'm just going to throw that in just to get started on shadow. And I can even throw in a nostril if I know where it goes. So the front, the lip goes right here, almost straight down. It comes out. The chin. Okay. So then I know the nostril is going to be somewhere around here. Just using my alizarin crimson, or alizarin permanent rather, not alizarin crimson. And I'm going to make a big pile of fleshy tone just to kind of hide the lines that I drew in that were kind of not in the right place. I just knock them out a little bit. Got a little bit too much orange going there, so I can knock that back. And then I can go right in with the lips shape here. Okay, Navidad EM. Hey man, doing was doing some studies too from Canada. Well, welcome. And the lower lip, I'm just going to use a slightly warmer red. One's in light and one's in the shadow, so kind of think it's a little hard to tell whether this is the same light hitting the lips. It's probably not because I see this light here on the shoulder is very cool. There's a little bit of cool here, but it looks like there's another light coming from the side that's warming up her lips a little. So we got one cool light and one warm light in the light side of her face. I mean, I guess we do have a little bit of shadow here, which looks pretty cool. And then we do have a little bit of shadow on the chin. Let's go ahead and make that a kind of a purplish color to start with. I can always make it a little grayer as I go. Something like that. It's probably a little closer to what it's going to be. I want to make sure that I'm not losing the tilt of her head. That's really important. The tendency would be um, to straighten out her head, so I want to guard against that. So get a tip of her nose in the right place. Again, I can use that purple to get the tip of the nose out there, but then it's going to go back pretty quickly. Let's see. Yep, that's about right. Okay, and we have this cool highlight there in the crevice of her nose, and then it kind of goes quite a bit of purple in there also. Shadow in her eye again with the purple. And there's a little bit of orange reflected light that I see in there too. And I'm gonna refine her eyebrow a little bit. It's not quite as broad or as wide as I made it. Okay. Looks like we have about 9 people who've joined us so far. Welcome all. Feel free to tell me where you're watching from, or if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them as I paint. Okay, so I want to know where her eyes are. This one I can pretty much guess is coming right here. I just see mostly the eyelash and a little bit of the arch of the eyebrow there. Let's get a little bit of the blue that's coming in the shadow there. And then it goes off into that half tone on the light side of the face. So Definitely going to have to be lighter here and darker there to get that to read as shadow. So let's start by making this a little bit darker. And then I can start to push this a little bit lighter too. I need a little more red in those eyebrows. I mean, they're predominantly black, but there is red when you get to the point where you're starting to see flesh tones through them, and they're a little bit lighter. They read as red, but they're reading as black, right? Or kind of like an auburn color right there. I do want to keep as, at some point I want to make sure there's not too much white contaminating her hair because I need to get very dark and transparent. So I have to work with a really clean brush when I get there. Okay, Gara's here. What paint brand do you use? I use all Gamblin artist colors, which is the highest grade that of their lines. They also have a student grade, which is their 1980, and they have a quick drying color, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. I think they might have an Alkyd version of their paint. I'll have to check on that one. And if you want to know my palette, I do have it posted on my Instagram feed, or Instagram page rather. You just look for a post that has my palette in it. I'm going to sneeze, so hold on a second. It's only when you tell people that you have to sneeze that you don't sneeze. So it's kind of gross. Okay, don't have to sneeze yet. If it just felt like it. There is this trick: if you stare into a bright light or in this towards the sun, then that does stimulate the sneeze. But couldn't do that at the moment. Okay. Let's get that lower lip just a little further out. That's going to help. Well, this lip does have to come out too. Let's see. Yep, by a good deal. But so then I need the lower lip to come out even further. And need to trim them on the other side. Something like that. I'll have to clean that up. Although her chin area is a little bit darker and bluer, so I want a lot of violet in there, so I just want to can push those darker. Okay, let's try again with that nostril. Well, I'm going to have to work on that. And I mustn't forget to add oranges and yellows here, or else the whole thing will go very cold on me. Okay, so let's see where that eyelid is, somewhere there. I get a nice spot of blue light reflecting off of the inside of her nose, not the inside of her bridge of her nose. That is probably phthalo blue will get me there. Phthalo is a little bit stronger than ultramarine blue in terms of getting a tint of blue. So if you're going to go very light, like something near, like if you're painting a landscape and the sky is near the horizon line and you need it to be very light, um, that's where that phthalo blue comes in handy if you're trying to maintain a certain amount of tinting strength. Okay, get that shadow in there. It goes from a blue to kind of a reddish hue in there. Let's see if I pull that down. Okay, so I need to mix a little bit of this background color. It looks something in between the phthalo and the ultramarine. Let's see if I can nail it. So, and there's a little bit of gray in there, although I think I'm going to start off pretty pure. And this will give me something to work against as I'm defining the features in her profile. Okay, there's not a lot of value difference here in the between the shadow side and that blue. It's more areas of her nose really stand out and are much lighter than the background. Let's see if I can push that a little bit lighter. Let's get a little bit of that purple that's coming in here underneath her eye. Don't have to be exact yet. It can be pretty loose with the paint. Some of that refining will come later. Okay, and I'm just going to paint in where I think the eyelashes are. I need to go back and measure that. Something, I think, like that, just to get it down so I have something to work with. That's not too far off. Let's try from the corner of her eye. Right there. Okay. I don't actually have that painted in yet. It's just a little dark. I have her pupil. She has, her pupils are blue. They're not that strong in this photo, but there's a lot of, she has a lot of bluish eyeliner on that's sort of accentuating her eye color. Okay, actually I put a lot of orange in there, but it's actually going cooler there, that spot. Let's make sure we don't lose the fold in the eyelid here. It's a very thin line. I'm using a thick brush, but that's okay. I can thin it out. Okay, so immediately to me her nose looks too long, and I think it's partially of where I have it turning. So let's try to fix that before I get too far along. Let's go a little bit darker with the shadow. I can come in and add little bits of light in there later. Okay, something like that. I'm going to get the blue that I was talking about right here. I did, from the original photograph, I did bring it into Photoshop, and I was going to use levels to make it a little bit darker, but I ended up using curves, which gives me a little more control over which values get darker and which values get lighter without losing any of the value information. So after the the lightest light. There really isn't any whites in this, so I pushed the curves over so that her highlights on her face then become the whitest whites, and just gives her whole face a little more contrast, which gives me a little bit more room to work. Photographs can do a lot with subtleties, but painting, that's a much harder task. You have to be um, really have a lot of time to work out very close values, and for this purposes of this demo, I don't have that kind of time. Okay, so I am going to keep on going. I see there's 13 people who have joined us now. Welcome to this live painting demo. If you're watching this after the fact, also welcome. Generally, I have maybe um, 60, 70 people who will watch over during the live demo. They'll come in and go out, so a total of 60 or 70 separate viewers. But then over time there'll be a few hundred people who will watch it. Right now I have one that's jumped up to um, over the last that I did a couple weeks ago that jumped up to 700 or 800 people have watched that one. Of which one was that? I think it was of Tashi Rodriguez. Was another model that I found on Pinterest. Okay, so that little bit of thicker paint helped. It gave me a sense of surface and dimension, so I can start to feel my way through a little bit in three-dimensional space. Let's get the underside of her nose, which is, again, there's lots of blues in this, and I have to go a little bit darker in some of these spots to get it to read properly. And I'm not really getting the edge of her nose to turn yet. Let's see. We'll get there. I think I'm pulling this nostril out a little bit too far too. So let's see if I can pull it in a little bit. Get some blue or purple right here. I may have to go just to pure white here to get it light enough. And then purple on the far side of that. Yep. And then I have that shadow, a little bit purple with black. It's more of a gray there. Oh, not enough black to get to gray. Hold on. Okay, well, it's going to be a little bit more purple than I want, but it's not going to hurt. Okay, so starting to see a few things. Her eye is set a little bit too far back. I'm going to try to work it forward a little bit. Get a little bit of that cool light hitting there. And get this eyelid to turn in space a little. I want to go darker. Get a little bit of orange in there. Sometimes I'm mixing with black, so actually if I mix the red and the black together, it'll get me a little more orange. That's darker than I want. Somewhere in there. Okay, I'm really going to have to squint to see what that value really is. I think that's closer. And I'm going to pull her eyebrow forward a little bit. If I measure, it's right there. Yep, so it has to come a bit more forward. Okay, and then I'm going to trim it on this side a little bit. Get a lot of white in there. As you see, there's lots of white here. That's where the reflection is in her forehead. I'm only going to get that to read if I go darker here. And I got quite a bit of blue up here also. Okay. And then I have to start thinking about the anatomy and structure in her face, because if I'm just painting shape to shape, I'm going to lose that sense of the bone structure underneath. So there's a little bit of cool pink here, and then it goes to a warmer pink right here. And then she has her freckles. I'm going to ignore that for now. I can think about the freckles at the very end. Really want to get more of an average color for a particular area. Let's pull her hairline forward a little bit here. Okay. So some areas of her face are starting to read now. I can kind of visualize the form. And it goes pretty dark underneath her chin here. Almost black, not quite black, but pretty close. But I'm going to need that to make the rest of her face feel light enough. And I got a warm shadow underneath her ear. It's really picking up a lot of the reflective color from her hair. Let's get a little bit of the purples here. And lots of blues in her jaw. If I don't get those grays and blues, then the color of her face is not going to feel right. It really needs a lot of blue to support that overall warmish tones in her complexion. Okay, there we go. Then this shadow I have to pull even further forward. And then again, got lots of blue. More blue than I thought. I probably should have put more blue out of my palette than the reds that I put out. Okay, and I gave her a little bit of one of those Toulouse-Lautrec noses. And I think I have to just give her a little bit more bridge in the nose. And it's just these subtle value changes sometimes that help you see the form is turning, not to mention a highlight or two in the right spot. Let's see if I can get those going. Yeah, I have to come in much thicker with the white to get that. And some blues and purples right here in the tip of the nose. Okay, so that's going to take a little bit of refinement before I get it there. That's fine. Sometimes these things require quite a bit of back and forth before they read correctly. Okay, so a couple more questions. Hello, Jack says hello from South Carolina. Hello and welcome. I'm in the South, but not the deep South. I'm in Baltimore. Never really thought of it as the South until I moved here and people started telling me, oh yeah, this is the South. It's like, okay. Didn't really feel like the South, but yeah. It is south of the Mason-Dixon line. I guess that makes it officially south, but a lot of the initial Civil War battles happened well south of here, near closer to DC. Yeah, and I guess that's the thing. DC is south of here, but it was the capital of the Union, and so it makes this feel like not so south. But I'm no historian, obviously. When I was a kid growing up, I thought the whole Civil War was fought in the South, meaning like Georgia and South Carolina. And I grew up in California, so had no real point of reference for any of it until I moved out here. Okay, I made the jawline coming up a little bit um, too low, so bring that up a little bit. Okay, and Gara asked, are you a full-time artist or is it part-time? I've always been curious on how to be a somewhat successful full-time artist. Well, I do know quite a few full-time artists. I have a day job, and then this is kind of a full-time job too. It's not currently bringing in enough income to call it to really support myself, so um, but that's fine. I kind of like it that way because it gives me the flexibility to paint exactly what I want and how I want to paint it and when I want to paint. Um, and that makes me enjoy it that much more. And I have started doing a lot of commission work, but it really is kind of on my terms. There's a lot of jobs that I'll turn down because they're just not good fits for what I'm due. And that sometimes that's a little hard, but at least the reception isn't buggy tonight so far. Haven't had any hang-ups. Um, so just be aware. I've had problems in the past where the stream goes out and then I have to fiddle around or do something to try to get it to come back on. So if you see the screen freeze and or you hear me talking and then you don't hear me talking, sometimes it takes me a while to figure that out and I'm not really paying attention because I'm painting, so I don't really realize it right away. Okay. I looked at a few people who've painted this before, and there's one that actually has, if you do a search for this painting, then you find that painting. And it was it was really well done, but it didn't show a whole lot of brushwork, which I like to see in a painting. So maybe mine will be the more brushwork version, I guess. Let's make sure I don't make her nose too pointy. It's going to take me a while before I get this highlight to read correctly because I'm just not getting enough grays around it. That's too much color. It took me a long time to figure this out, but sometimes when a color doesn't read right and you want to change it, it's not always that the color is wrong. It could be that the colors around it aren't really supporting it, and you have to change those colors that surround it first before it starts to read. Um, Much like how the nose that I painted in here looks too dark in comparison to the reference, and it may be a shade too dark, um, but the bigger problem is that the blue background still isn't dark enough. And so I am going to step that a little bit darker, and then you can sort of see how that changes things. Really then gets the nose to pop out a little bit more. And then if I get it even more dark around her hair and the shadows in her chin, etc., then that will also help. Let's get a little bit more of that. Now it's too dark. Okay. That's okay. There's only a little bit there, and then the hair comes in around here. Okay, let's pick up a bigger brush just for a moment. And I got some of those nice brush marks in there too from the bigger brush. Sometimes I keep those, sometimes I decide that it's too distracting and I flatten it out a bit. And that's the only place I really have that blue. I don't have any blue on the other side of her. There's dark, almost black, which I can also put in. Want to keep that kind of thin. Put a little bit of safflower oil in there to help thin it out. And that helps also keep it a little bit glossy so that it doesn't dry back too flat. If you thin the paint out too much with the paint thinner with Gamsol, then it will dry kind of matte, and then it loses the value structure. Okay, so this is really calling out for me just to go ahead and just block in a kind of an average color for her hair. See if I can get something kind of in the ballpark. Yeah, just want to keep that thin too. I can just go kind of thinly where she has the highlights. Later I'll come back in with some white, but for now I can just thin out the paint a little bit just to get the idea. Maybe some of that I'll keep in the finished painting. Some black in there. I see Navidad said, I hope it's not cheating that I'm painting along digitally, and no, not at all. That is highly encouraged. Then I'm mixing some of the black of the background in with the hair, making sure that the hair doesn't get too dark. Added a little bit of white there, but I can already see that's going to be problematic. I want to keep it pretty thin for now and transparent. that black mark actually is a little bit further back, or that where the part of her hair is. And that ear is a little bit distracting now because it's just too light. So just going to fix that. And then lots of blue in her neck. I'll finish off with the hair in a minute. There is no order that I paint things in a lot of the time. I just start in one area and find myself somewhere else and then have to work my way back. So I'm using that sort of same blue that I had mixed up for the background. It's kind of feels like it should be in the same family. Okay, so I don't know if I'm getting the likeness yet, but I kind of like the expression on her face. Just want to straighten her chin line there a little bit. And then I have some of the hair that's coming out from underneath. It's very black here. I want to get that structure in her neck that swoops down. It's almost like a fashion illustration line to it. Okay, that's pretty good. I don't know. If this all goes smoothly, who knows, it may end up being a shorter demo. Kind of like the feel of it so far, but who knows, once I get into some of the facial features I may have to spend a bit more time getting them to resolve nicely. I do know that if I keep it nice and painterly, then it will end up being a more interesting painting, not a copy of the photograph, but more of a painting in its own right. And so I have to keep that in mind, not to get too bogged down in trying to get it to match the photograph. I think that's sometimes that's where a lot of artists go awry. They get too hung up on the reference material. I know I'm guilty of that a lot. And then they forget that it needs to be a painting first. If it isn't working as a painting, then it's not really working at all, even if it's a close match to the photograph. So try to keep that in mind when you're making your paintings, that it needs to be a painting. Let's get a little bit darker red here, just in the front of her cheek there. And then just pull this down a little bit. And then what I said about the structure of her face, so here's her, it's very subtle, but here's her jaw, or not her jaw, her cheek. The upper part of her cheek is here with the highlight. And then there's the hollow of her cheek, which is where it's turning blue. And I want to get just a little bit of a darker blue here. Just gives us an indication that the form is turning at this spot, even coming out from the ear there. And I can exaggerate that a little bit just to make sure that you feel it. And then I can go lighter here so that this is where the jawline comes out a little bit again. Swoops down this way, and then I have another swoop here, that movement into the lips. So if I get the paint moving in the right direction, that really does help um, the read of that form. So even more important than getting the likeness is getting the structure, the anatomical structure of the face. Because that's the part that's really the magic, you know, when you get that stuff to read, then it's just sort of has that kind of wow factor. Especially if the brushwork is helping to accentuate that. Sure, I get enough blue in here, blues and purples. And then, which I really kind of missing it right now, is that there's a darker blue along the jaw. And we have her chin here. And then where it meets the jaw, we usually have this little bit of a change of form. So we have the chin, the jaw, and this, you can look for it on everyone's face, this little bit of um, depression there that leads up towards the lips. I don't even know what to call that. I just know visually, you know, that I see it. Okay, so just going back and look, now that I said don't worry about the likeness that much, then I'm going back and adjusting her where her brow is. I just pull it down a little bit. So there's this one shadow that's lighter. Then there's a darker shadow underneath her brow. That's kind of a warm shadow. So right now I made the shape, but I didn't really hold on to the form there. So it's kind of getting a little more graphic, but if I go in with a little bit of smaller brush and get some of that subtlety back, then it will start to read again. Eyebrows there. There's the upper eyelid. Eyelashes. Okay, that was a little bit too much, but you get the idea. Let me see, Rachel is here. Hello, this is shaping up beautifully. Thank you, Rachel, and welcome. Alejandro, this is fire. I guess, thank you. I assume that's a compliment. It's lit, you know? So, and I want to make sure that the I'm differentiating the iris from the white of the eye, so I have to go a little bit lighter with the white there. Indicate where the pupil is. Assuming I have it painted in the right place, then the pupil is going to be right about there. And it, notice looking at some 19th century painters, they often don't put in that dark edge to the iris. They will just leave it without indicating it. I'm not sure why that was the fashion back then, but it works. John Singer Sargent would do that. He would just paint in the color of the eye, the white of the eye, but he wouldn't put in that darker edge of the eye color. Kind of interesting. But I saw a lot of painters at that time did the same thing, and I guess maybe if you squint down, you really don't see it that much, so they didn't paint it in because they were trying to get more of the illusion of the form more than painting every aspect of it. So if that was something that they could leave out, I guess that's why they didn't include it. And it simplified the brushwork. And I have to give her back a little bit more tip of her nose, just very subtly, and then the darker shadow kind of fell off. Okay, I'm having a hard time getting the paint to stick in that spot. It's okay. I can just go in with black if I need to. Okay, that's not actually not too bad. It's a little. Sometimes it's frustrating. You'll lose the tooth in certain parts of the panel because it's just either didn't have enough gesso on it or it had a little bit too much paint soaked into that spot, and so you have to come back much thicker then to get it to accept the paint. Okay, I'm just trying to get those warms and cools that are in the nose, and I really want to get the bridge of her nose the right shape. It's getting there. And then there's this little bit of transition here between that lighter shadow and darker shadow. And I can come in, I can move the paint around a little bit and get it, or I can come in with fresh strokes, or a little bit of both in this case. Okay, so that's starting to feel like the right shape there. I feel like I need to move her eye forward a little bit. I have it just a little bit too far back, like I said. So let's go ahead and just shift everything over a little bit. Get her other eyelash going. Get this angle. And I mean, sometimes I go, a little bit too far the other way, and then I have to bring it back, and I may have done that just now. It's okay. Yep. Feels like I went a little bit too far. Okay, that's feeling a little bit better there. Who knows, some paintings I adjust things like that sometimes 100 times before I'm happy with it. And but you can see that I'm like focused a little bit too much on matching the photo, but I want at least the anatomy to feel like it's right. And sometimes that just takes getting a little closer to what the photo is doing. Okay, a little more orange in her hairline here. Okay, and I need to get a little punchier with that shadow underneath her lips. And I need to say the word purple out loud as I paint it. Purple and blue. Okay, and then I need the highlight in her lip. That's going to be quinacridone red with white. Okay, so I'm just going to do one pass, which is just the base color, and then I'm going to do a lighter, a little bit. I think I need the alizarin permanent to get that color. Or do you know what? Change my mind. I need the dioxazine purple, a little bit of the quinacridone red. That will give me a very intense color, or that will hold up with a lot of white. And then I can go ahead and put that in there. And then just a little spot of just pure white right in there. That'll really give it a bit of a punch. Then I gotta watch where the bow of the upper lip is, because it really is quite forward, and then this has a hint of the other side of it. And that all has to come up just a bit higher. Yep, that's looking good. And then we just need a little bit of very deep red here in the corner of the mouth. Okay, I like it, except just the tip of the nose is bothering me. Just not getting dark enough to separate from the background. Okay, and now I think I can get this white to read here. Except I gotta paint it in the right place. And then it comes all the way to the tip of the nose, but not quite as bright. Now we're just gonna push it down, correct it a little bit on that side. Well, that's just making your nostril feel pinched. So I was not paying attention to the nostril there. So I do want to shove some black in her nostril, just to deepen that a little bit. Okay. I'm still feeling like her nose is too long. There's something a little bit out of place there. I'm not going to go crazy over it, but need to work it out. So, and then I gotta still work on moving the rest of her eye forward. She's got some purple eyeshadow on underneath her eye. Purple, gray, it's going towards gray a little bit. And let's thin down her eyelid a little bit there. Okay, let's just check this distance here. That looks like it's in the right place now. So with that, I have to fix everything else. The eyebrow, it's not too far off. Okay, so far so good with the feed. Happy about that. Okay, I have this white here where the shadow is, should be. I need to cover that over. soften this edge a little bit more. Pay attention to the direction of the shadow line to make sure that the form is helping the form read. And pull this color out a little bit. There's purple again in here, some violets, and then there's some blues right there, a little bit lighter blue. There we go. And that comes right through to the other side. Don't want to lose all that nice brushwork there, so I'm going to be doing this thoughtfully. So I'm missing some accents in here. That's going to help the eye read. That under edge of her eyelid has quite a bit of red in it. Then it kind of goes to black there. And then I have that red coming down right through her tear duct, and then there's a shadow of her eyelash. If you can, that's sort of what's reading, is that point out there. It's just a shadow that's coming out. Okay, pull those eyelashes forward. I don't know if these are eyelashes or just the shadows of her eyelashes from the upper eyelid, but they're looking kind of forward. Let's just get a little bit of white in there to get that form to turn. Okay, a little bit too much, but that's okay. Can easily knock that stuff back. Let's get some really light blue right here. Okay, got a little paint on my monitor. It's kind of throwing me off a little bit. Okay, so where is this really off? I think I need her jaw to come back a little bit more. There we go. So I really want this form to read, so I'm going to put a lot more white there and here. This is the top of her jaw. I want to say jaw, top of her cheek. Then she has kind of a little bit of shadow from her hair or something right here. Just going to put that in. It just helps those highlights stand out even more. You can get really thick there. And then I want to get that really strong orange red lock of hair there. A little bit of blue that's behind it towards the ear. Okay. So getting those forms to start to read. I'm going to start squinting down to see like if there's areas that are lighter or darker in her face that I'm just totally missing. So that's one area there in her upper lip. And a little bit of purple, light purple here on the top of her chin. little more color in it. There we go. And then a bit of blue. Gotta get all that blue in there. It's really gonna help her face read properly. Keep all the interest of the color in it. And I really want to get almost really thick pure white right in that corner next to the eye. I can just keep on coming back in with hits of white. That's going to really help there. Okay, so the question is, how much of this long brushwork do I want to keep? It's really tempting to just keep on painting over it, and I think in that cheek I am going to put freckles in here, but I think I don't want to touch it any more than just maybe put a few freckles on top of that. So I'm going to try to avoid painting in that area and fix some of the subtleties in other places, because that really just has the beauty of the paintwork in it. You know, part of painting is deciding which passages are help your painting and which ones don't. And I think those help, but I think some of these transitions, like down below, can be a little bit softer. Or maybe just a little bit right here. Just soften that up a little bit. And I have this really dark passage here, and I may try to lose that a little, or come in with lighter freckles, something. Okay, so I need to start putting in a little more of the hair that's there. Let me just get this one little bit of light that's in the corner of the eye. I think that's going to help me. And keep the edge that's there. Get the tear duct in there. Okay, good, good, good. And let me soften this a little. Get that bridge of the nose a little bit lower. Very light blue there. That seems to speak of using the phthalo blue to get it to read. That's too light. So if I go darker, then I can get it even stronger. It's not too bad. Reading a little bit too strong, but I think that's because I have it coming down too far. Let's push that. And I got a little bit too dark with that red in there. Let's get that one light as well. See if I can get it close to the same value. So there really isn't that much value difference between the two there. It's mostly a color change. I like it. it's getting a little closer to where I want it to be. And there's a little white edge or blue edge along her nose. It's looking a little bit too strong, too far out. Yep, wish I hadn't done that, but that's okay. I can fix it. Okay, wasn't as bad as I thought. Just needed to refine it a little. Okay, there's something a little off there, but I need to just figure out what it is first before I go too far. Yep, I think it just got that bridge of the nose out a little bit too much. See if I pull it back a little. Or I could go the other way and just add a little bit to the tip of her nose. So I think it is very close to that edge. Nope, not that far out. Which is a shame because it just looked pretty good before. And so I think I messed with it too much. Now I have to try to get it back to where it was. Okay, that's starting to feel closer again. Just going back and forth in a few spots here, just to get it so it reads right. Okay, I need to mix up more of that background color so I have enough to work with. Because the problem I'm having is the eye was just too far forward. Once I get that fixed, I think the nose will start to look like what I want it to do, which is, because it didn't have the right angle before, even though it kind of had a nice look about it. And so without pulling that eye back just a tad, I was having problems with it. Okay, so that's starting to feel a little bit closer to what I wanted. let's get a little bit lighter red underneath the ear so that um, feels more like a shadow with light reflecting back into it. Then I need a little bit softer edge here on the earlobe so that you feel the turn of the ear that has some thickness to it. Okay, and I do want to simplify some of these shapes in here. I don't want to go crazy with all the details in the shadow here. It would just make the painting look really stiff. So just keep it simple. Okay, something not quite right here in the forehead area. Let's pull this back a little bit. Okay, want that blue along here. And I'm going to straighten out her forehead just a little bit. Need to go dark enough here. Okay, overall the things, certain things are starting to read a little bit better. Okay, Jack is here. Welcome. Says looking good. Thank you. Okay, so let me get back to the hair, so then that'll help me know where I am with the face and start to get a little bit of the shoulder in. So for the hair, I need to have no white. So I'm cleaning up my palette away from my transparent colors so that I have plenty of space to work with where there's no white on the palette. Okay. There we go. Nice and clean. Okay. And then I need a clean brush. I have this big, pretty thick, large flat bristle, but I'm afraid the ferrule of the brush has gotten kind of too loose. See if I can just turn the handle around, and that's been kind of bugging me a little bit. So let me see if I can find another one real quick. Bear with me here. I'm out of my seat, and I need to buy more brushes. I'll just pull these out. Got my cans of brushes here for emergencies. This is definitely an emergency. Okay, let's see what we got. Sorry, let's get those off camera. And I may end up using that same one because I'm up. Here we go. That one's a little stiff. Here's a nice filbert. You can see the shape of it there. It's a little round on the end. I was hoping to have a flat. This one here is synthetic. It's a little too soft for what I want. So I want all of the lines from the brush, and a stiffer brush will do a better job with that. Let me see. I think this one may do the trick. You know what? I'm just going to stick with the one I have. Sorry to drag you through all of that. Just need to clean it up because it's the right size and shape for what I'm doing. I don't have another brush that's quite there. This one's close, but where this, maybe they're both the same. This one's just gotten stiffer over time. Okay, found the brush I want. It's just a less beat up version of the same brush. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to get my transparent reds in there with a little bit of my chromatic black, which is also transparent. And that's the color I want back here. See how nice and rich that is. Keep it transparent, keep white out of it. Add a little bit of the safflower oil to keep it fluid. And as much as I can get the feeling of the hair with just a few simple passes of the brush, the better, because I want to really see that brushwork in there. That's really going to sell this painting. When I say sell, I don't mean like someone buying it. I mean getting lots of likes. You know what I'm saying? Okay, and then her hairs are coming against her back, and I haven't painted her back in yet. That would have been a good thing to do first. Okay, so we got a little bit of volume going in her hair. What I don't have are the lightest lights, which are kind of bring a little bit of orange in here to get some of that. And that we're going a little more opaque then with reds and oranges. And then I can just add a touch of white into that to get some of it. See how nice that is. And then this area that was transparent, I can come in. That really does feel nice. Lots of movement and volume. Really feels like hair in some spots. You can come in with tiny little brushes and render the hair out, but you're never going to get it quite as lively and fresh than if you're using a big brush. Okay, so I'm going to leave that for now. I may come and clean it up a little bit later, but that feels pretty good. Okay, and okay, so let's get going on her shoulder here. So the neck is pretty blue. It's a little more lighter light. It starts to get warmer. Now I'm really like getting a lot of white on my palette here. Back again. Okay, so that's the warm color. Have a little bit of shadow here. Now I'm hanging on to this big brush. It's doing a good job for me right now. Okay, I have the shadow here, and then I have the shoulder coming forward, and there's a dark, warm dark here, right at the top of the shoulder. Then that comes down into a lot of purple. It's just more a color change and a value change there, where it sits against the hair. And didn't really do the hair yet in that part. So I kind of have to go. Hopefully there's not too much white on my brush. Okay, and I'm gonna keep on going. Get a little more red in here. Those locks. Okay, but I'm not gonna spend too much time on that right now. I want to get back to painting the shoulder, since I've got a lot more white on my palette again. Okay, so the shoulder. It's got a bit of orange in it. That's mostly from the freckles. But I'm trying to paint more of the general color. So that general color is kind of reading as orange. And then lots of blue. Well, not that much blue. A bit of blue in the flesh tones back here. See how I went really blue there, so I'm going to have to knock that back a little bit. We'll see. We have a little bit of red in the shoulder, or the underside of the shoulder. I'm just grabbing that in. It's not a big deal. I mean, I will want some of the brushwork to read, so I will have to get a little bit of thinner in there for that. Just circling around where that highlight is. And that is very cool. Okay, something like that. Back to blue right here. Seeing lots of blues in those flesh tones. Don't be afraid to pull out the blue, if you're painting. I think too often people paint flesh tones and they only will be using warm colors, and they'll forget that unless you offset some of those warm colors with cool colors, it never will look quite right. You won't get that kind of luminosity to the flesh. It will just look like they came out of some sort of tanning salon or something with a fake tan. I need blacks and purples here underneath her arm. Let's get that measurement. Yep, that's the right spot. And then it becomes very soft and purple on this side of it. And then goes off into a blue again. So something like that, but this side of it is a little bit harder edge. I have this thing holding my panel here. Sorry about that. The little holder was getting in the way. So I need to just get that moved so I can get this sharp edge here. So these are all really subtle value and color shifts here. I need to make sure that they stay really soft. I can still show some brushwork, but I have to be careful that the brushwork doesn't mean that there's a lot of contrast. And right now this doesn't feel like a cast shadow. It feels more like a form shadow, so let's get this back on the holder. So I need to soften this edge a little. That's looking a little bit better. And this is where I said the hair is sitting on top of her back, and I have to then make sure I get it painted in there that way. It's got some locks of hair coming down, and then there's a little bit of shadow that sits on her back, and that's got to be slightly different than her hair color if that's going to read. Okay, so let's evaluate a little bit. This is feeling, her eyebrow is feeling a little bit too far out there. I think it's kind of mixed with the hairline. Okay, got a little more of this color here. Okay, well, that color came in really hot, but don't mind it so much. Okay, I need to restate that those eyelashes. Not enough black. Okay. Okay, that works for now. And I'm missing a little bit of shadow here. This comes in a little bit deeper. Yeah, I keep on going back and forth of that and not getting the subtlety of it. That's a little bit better. I just get a little bit of the reds that's there. Oops. Boy, really am challenged, aren't I? never going to get the tip of her nose just right. So I probably should just quit while I'm ahead. Just trying to get a little subtlety in her upper lip there. Okay, let me see. Lori says, just popped in and wow. Well, thank you. Watching from Australia. Well, that's a big country out there. Where in Australia, I'd like to know. And Martine says, from Canada, quite impressive. Thank you. Just going to lower the top of her ear a little bit. That's, little things bother me. Other things that are not true to the photo I can just leave, but it's sort of affecting the feeling of the angle of her head, because the ear has to be low for her head to feel like it's tilting back. So that's a worthy change there. And I may have to lower her earlobe just a little bit too. Let's see. Yep. So I don't have her earlobe nearly low enough. And that's why it's sort of straightening out her head a little bit. So why don't I just come down more like that, just repaint that ear. Get some of the shadow that's there underneath. Okay, not a very pretty earlobe. Let's see if I can fix that. And then the rest is pretty much in shadow, so I need to make sure I don't go too light there. And then I can really trim the earlobe there. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. I do need to pick up the bigger brush though, because I am just kind of poking around with the skinny one here. Just getting a little bit more dimension to her hair here. Getting some of those darks in. Oh, that's a little too orangey for my taste. Let's knock that out. Make sure that I'm getting lighter with more white than yellow. That's better. That's a little bit too much white. Okay, so let's get a little more black in there. Okay, got some white in there, which I didn't want. Okay, and I got like almost pure purple in here, which is, it's so dark that you can't really read the color that easily, but it does add a little bit of um, extra feeling of color to the whole thing. Okay, so I'm gonna just do a little bit more on the hair, and then I need to step back from it a little bit, make sure I'm not overworking it. Okay, and then the ear, the top of the ear can go a little bit darker, red, purple color. That's nice. And then just a touch of orange in there. Don't really have to do too much in there because it really is in shadow. It doesn't need to, you don't need to have everything reading. Okay, I obliterated some of the white area that I wanted in there. Okay, so I'm getting close here. So Lori says I'm in Canberra, and it's 1:45 p.m. Okay, late lunch. Sorry, late lunch break. Okay, good to know. So, what does it need? I think I need to soften some of the transitions in here around the shoulder. Need to make sure that the shoulder has the tops and sides working. Okay, it's just a lot of activity going on there in the brushwork, and it's distracting. So that's where I can start to make this stuff a little subtler. I'm going to come in and I need to deepen that shadow, but don't need to do it at the moment. And the shadow underneath the ear needs to go darker too. Just getting a little bit of the tension that's back there in the neck, showing the creases. It's a really big brush. Normally I'd be grabbing my smaller brush, but maybe it's laziness, or maybe I just want the effect of the bigger brush. So I pushed the shadow area here that was very purple. I pushed it back quite a bit. It was reading too light, and it was a little bit distracting. So Jennifer Stevenson says, watching you paint the hair was so exciting. Amazing job. Thank you. Which I'm still doing, putting in little touches here. Okay, and then there's some darker strands coming in over here. Okay, so even though I wanted to hold on to a lot of this brushwork in the face, now I can see, now that I have other parts painted, that some of the transitions here are a little bit too strong, and I need to soften them up a little bit. Really, I'm more about, I want a little bit of that fleshiness to read more than the brushwork. I like the brushwork, don't get me wrong. It's the brushwork that sells it, but if it doesn't feel true, then then it's just not going to hold up as well. So just very sparingly, I'm just knocking some of it down. Need to bring in back these lower, I still think it's just shadows of the eyelashes, but it's reading as eyelashes, so. I have to keep on squinting a little bit to make sure that I'm getting things in the right place and the right values. Sorry, I'm getting a little quiet here. If you ask me questions, I'll talk more, but sometimes I just get into my own head a little bit. middle of that reddish, warmish red here, there's a cool red. Let's see if I can get that color. That's too dark. Maybe I should have kept it white and naphtha red. The white would have cooled it down enough. Oh, I think that's right. And then it goes darker here, a little more purple. And then I have a little bit of blue in the cheek here, so obliterating some of that brushwork, but that's okay. I decided I wanted to. Okay, and this is where I need to go darker in the shadow here. That's good. Bring a little more of that blue back in. Okay, I just about used up all my white here, so I'm going to have to get some of that back. I mean, put out more. That's what I meant to say. There's a lot of color changes with almost no value change. That's really hard to paint. Okay, so I lowered the ear, but I needed to lower that lock of hair too. Okay, I desperately need white. Okay. A 20-second break here to get more white out. And I think I'm going to grab, if I can find it, the radiant white, which is like titanium white, but it uses safflower oil instead of linseed oil to make it slightly less yellow. Did I find it? Radiant white. Okay. So that's places where I want this really coolish white, like in the shoulder and a little bit on along the jaw near the ear. So let's just get a little bit rubbed in here. Because if I squint down, this is what I'm seeing is lighter. I see that in a few places. The touch here. And I can restate this along the nostril. greenish blue right in here. Again, more of a color change than a value change. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I want a few freckles in here. Don't want to go crazy with the freckles. I'm just sort of looking over this whole thing, see if I'm missing anything. We're about 2 hours in. I'm just going to take my time here and get some of the little details that I want. Maybe making her a little bit too pretty, but that's okay. Got a little touch of green in here in the neck. It's very subtle. Okay, got this nice red reflective light coming right here, which which I don't want to lose. And this curve of the neck is just a little bit deeper than what I have it. I'm missing a little bit of her neck back there. I think kind of sells the whole thing. Okay, we're almost there, almost home. Like I said, I just want a few freckles, not to go crazy. So let's see if I can get a good color for the freckles generally. Yeah, I think I'm going to go just a bit lighter. Yeah, doesn't really need that much. Try not to go too crazy here. And of course in the shoulder too. It's really, she actually has more freckles in her shoulder than in her face. Oh, that one's just a little bit too much. Let's bring it back. Okay, let's see what we can do up there. Okay, I get 20 more freckles and then I'm done. Just gotta make sure I get them in the right place. Just trying to go a little bit lighter there. Not happy with this one freckle here, so I'm just gonna paint around it. Okay, anything that looks terribly wrong. Okay, a few more here, just to give it kind of a sense of surface, because I do really have that shoulder painted really smooth. do want the freckles to follow the form so that we do get a sense that it's helping us understand the form. Let's get a little more blue in here. Okay. I think this is just about done. Just want maybe a couple strands of hair that are just a little bit lighter and brighter. I clean this up here a little. The paint got a little too oily and started to run on me here. It's not a kind of look that I like, that sort of drippy look. Okay, just want to get that eyelid to read a little bit better. Okay, I think that's pretty close. I might just leave it at that. Oh, not done. Want a little bit more action in the hair here. Okay, I think that's all I can really do. Okay, so, well, I always speak too early. I always see something I want to change after I say that I'm done. But you do have to be careful that you don't overwork it. You gotta make sure that change is something that it's gonna improve it. Yeah, like I just messed that whole thing up right there. Like I said, make sure it's going to improve it. Okay, and just want another hit of white right here. So, you guys hanging in there with me? I am just pulling this out a little bit longer. see, I may have missed a few comments here. Hi everyone, Brian from North Carolina here. That is a great likeness. The reflections on the skin, watching from South Africa or Saudi Arabia. I'm guessing Saudi Arabia um, from the name I can't read because it's in Arabic, I think. Just gonna tighten up the eye a little bit here. Okay, that's looking good. Just gonna lose a little bit of this forehead here. Okay, I think it has a nice fresh look still, so I'm going to stop while I'm ahead. See if I can sign this somewhere. I have a brush with a nice sharp handle that if it's truly alla prima, you can sign right into the paint there. Okay, fantastic. All right, so that's it for tonight. Just going to cover over this one little mark here. Great. Okay, that's it for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please do so and click on notifications if you want to be notified when I post new videos. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you next week. And thank you for being